Oh. Well, bring your TV in. Joe Millionaire Special. Oh, man. You didn't set your VHS recorder? Oh, man. He is obviously not Gizmo Caleb. Tom could have operated it. He's great at operating this equipment. You should have had him set it up. Okay. Or Pete. Either one of them. Either one of them. There you go. Okay. Back to the Matrix. So what our hero Neo asked of the Oracle said that she herself did not understand what might bring the peace. So she could not help Neo. He was on his own. And in this story, we find out that the Oracle has taken a lot of heat from the machine world for being involved in giving her readings to the people of Zion. And because of that, Agent Smith and his minions come against the Oracle. Anyone that's helping Neo is an enemy of Agent Smith. But remember, Agent Smith is decoupled from the Matrix. He's not working for the Matrix anymore. The remedy is for Neo to go to the machine capital. And what he has to do in the machine capital is he has to negotiate a treaty with the machines to get them to agree to stop the war which has been going on forever with the people of Zion. And in order to negotiate a treaty of peace, usually requires certain things to be conditioned. For instance, neither side is going to be interested in a peace treaty unless there is a transaction or an incident which possibly might prevent either or both sides from, quote, actually winning a war, unquote. So when Neo goes to answer the machine world, their draft, settle a war, end up giving them an offer, he's got to pose to the machine world a draft condition as to why it's to their advantage to want to stop the war. And that's exactly what he does. And I will not expose to the people on the tape here what condition he raises to the machine world that makes it advantageous to that world to at least accept his offer to mitigate a transaction or a circumstance which, if successful, would continuously create an armistice or a truce between the two worlds. It is extremely interesting that the people of Zion are being beat back along their defenses to the point where they're almost at their last straw, are still believing that there is no prayer of a chance that Neo is ever going to be able to achieve a peace so that their military defense is not necessary. But Morpheus is back in Zion with the rest of the army and the rest of the people. And in the bitterness of the fight, there is just a slight deviation of the machines from the program of attack that looks almost certain to overcome and overwhelm the final defenses of the Zion Defense Force. But in that slightest deviation in the attacking formation, Morpheus immediately senses a change, and he stands up, comes out of his defense, and puts down his weapon. Much as the rest of the army and the commander of Zion are looking at Morpheus act as though he's a blithering idiot. But such is the faith of Morpheus, and such is his discernment in just almost the body language of the attacking troops, that he senses that there is a change, and he wants to show that the people of Zion are willing to accept a truce or a peace or an armistice if that is what's been negotiated and that is what is in fact taking place. In the final scene, we see a new world. We see a city in the background which for the first time has a sun in a clear sky, because during the war the machine world occupies the surface, and it's dark, and it's gray, and it's black, and it's white, and there is no beauty and natural color in the world until the final scene. Pardon? When they went up, yeah, they had a Neo in the vessel that he was using to get to the city before he was put in the heart of the machine city, and action caused him to actually fly way up in the sky beyond the enemy equipment to get him, and he did go up to the sun, which is like a preconsideration of the rewards of the contract that would be fulfilled if his mission of peace were to be successful. It's interesting that there were discussions going on with the oracle as to who in the machine world was giving Neo, Trinity, Morpheus, and the other people of Zion any good information. And at one time, a discussion of what Neo was told by the architect of the matrix was discussed, and the powers that be in the matrix informed them that the architect was a blithering idiot. He had no true knowledge of the whole picture of anything. He was merely a program in the matrix whatsoever that was purely programmed to see things only from the public side of the matrix, which obviously the oracle was beyond. The oracle could see both sides, but she'd talk only about the public side, but she would talk in riddles about the private side. Obviously there's a peace that comes down. Obviously in the end it's not an end but another beginning. It's like the earth has been restored to the Garden of Eden once again, and we're waiting for the person to pick the wrong fruit, to go back into commerce, to start the warfare all over again. Obviously, at that time, the end of Matrix 3, you're seeing a condition in which there is still people in the Matrix, as well as you're seeing people that are in Zion. As part of the Treaty for Peace, it was negotiated that if the peace came about because Neo were to fulfill his part of the agreement, that the machine world would allow any of the humans that were in the Matrix who wanted to leave, to allow them to voluntarily join the people of Zion. And that was ratified by the policy directives to certain entities in the matrix at the end. And so my one buddy says to me, now that we've gone through the 3 Matrix movies and seen that the ending is really just a new beginning of sorts, what do you believe is in the mind of the Wachowski brothers that were controllers and directors over this story and this film. And then, of course, in the background, I have not seen it, but for those people that are interested, I understand that the whole Matrix series is really an elaboration on a Japanese film called Ghosts in the Shell. And I don't know how old that movie is, but I understand that the Japanese movie Ghost in the Shell were basically the prototype for the more elaborate Hollywood version, The Matrix. And I think I myself might be interested in trying to acquire a copy of Ghost in the Shell and see how much of the story or the concept may have been elaborated upon in the Wachowski movie. But my friend said, what do you think's in the mind of the Wachowskis? For instance, we have seen that film or that story now end. If we were to have to relate the story of the Matrix to the history of man, where would the history of mankind be right now in comparison to the conditions which exist at the end of the Matrix 3 movie? Would those conditions be planet Earth today, 2003? Would they correspond to the Christian concepts of some time in Revelation? Would they correspond to the Christian scriptures sometime, let's say, at the time of the Messiah, when he died roughly 33 AD? The Wachowski brothers are basically Jewish in their religious beliefs. What is their line of thinking in terms of a metaphor for the story of the Matrix? And for the Jewish people, where might we be in terms of the history of mankind from the Jewish perspective, in which they believe that the Messiah has not yet come? Is Neo the prototype of their wannabe Messiah that is going to achieve some ability to extract mankind from the one world government servitude of the straw men that now exists? Very interesting questions. We're not going to take them up this evening, but I thought that you might have an interest in that film. The film is about a 2-hour film. It's not much longer than that. It covers action. It covers another brief love story. It covers a redemption. It covers a peace which is in total harmony with all the teachings we have been making. It covers the concept that the war stops when the commerce stops, when the debts stop, when the war stops. And so as a film and as a story, it's a quite remarkable feat. Several things are going on. Had a gentleman call me today and he goes, very interesting. He says, I've been following the process of basically acceptance, return, ask for settlement and closure. This gentleman said, I have had a problem with IRS for a number of years, and in the last year I've been accepting their offers for value, returning them, asking for settlement and closure, and I've been tendering bill of exchange or check on a closed account and asked them to settle and close the account. Basically, the argument has gone down a peg. He doesn't feel quite so forced and threatened by them. But when he sends them a bill of exchange, they may first acknowledge it, say fine. Then they'll come back again and test them. They seem to have been testing him by totally ignoring the instrument that he's tendered them. Don't talk about it at all. Except once or twice they acknowledge they received it. The instrument has all kinds of bank stampings on it, front and back, and they send him the instrument back, along with a letter thanking him, but suggesting that it didn't pay, which of course is true. Nothing pays, there is no money. Didn't ask and didn't tell him to pay it. Said settle and close it. For a while, we were suggesting that maybe if these instruments actually came back, like the bill of exchange or the checks on the closed account, that was inappropriate, that actually maybe you ought to return the check or the instrument back to them again. But then this party told to me, he said, he said, there is a lot of times that the physical checks are no longer needed and required, that they can, through electronic transfers, put things through, and the physical instruments sometimes are no longer even needed. So if they send the instrument back, chances are you don't need to return it to them. Just acknowledge that you've accepted it, etc. And so this has happened for a tax year in question. Let's just pick 1998. And he settled that one out, okay? He said things were looking good. He's responded. And now, all of a sudden, about a month or month and a half ago, he gets a notice of the fact that the IRS has liened his straw man in the county recorder's office. And he immediately goes, well, this isn't good. I've tendered payment to close the account, and they're sending me notice of lien. So he responded to them and accepted their notice of lien and returned it for value for settlement and closure. And he sent them a letter which basically, with the acceptance and stuff, told them to remove the lien because he'd already even gotten back from them the instrument where he had tendered the consideration for settlement and closure, and he attached all that information and told them to remove the lien. It's interesting that almost in no time flat, within a week or 10 days, he got a letter back from the IRS that said, we'll release the lien immediately upon the deliverance to us of a certified cashier's check or money order. To which, about 30 days later, he sent them another letter telling them that they needed to release the lien, and sent them copies of all he had tendered and their discussions coming back to him. He called me today and said that he was absolutely shocked because he has just gotten a notice from an insurance company that owes his straw man money that the IRS has levied the money owed the straw man. And my friend says, what does this tell you and what's going on? Doesn't any of this make any sense? And why aren't they following the law as we believe they should be doing it? Well, I gave you all of the facts that my friend gave me, but he didn't give me all those facts in that order until I went back and started asking him. And I said, look, there's something that you had to have done that dishonored these people for them to go after the levy. Now I said one of two theories has been going through my head, and about 2 months ago I suggested very strongly that it appears as though the use of asset money is kind of like the mercury thermometer, and that if your straw man character owns assets, which is really liabilities, in this world, fictional world of the matrix, that bank accounts, income, automobiles, homes, they're all what's called assets to the artificial entity, but in reality they're liabilities, because there is no gold and silver to acquire these. So consequently they're acquired with IOUs, which is the evidence of a liability. So therefore, when you exchange a promise to pay for what you believe is an asset, all you acquire is another liability, since there was no asset consideration. So if we look on the assets of the straw man as being negatives in the universe in terms of money or value, liability, one presumption is that you as the living soul, if you're trying to close and settle an account of the straw man, and you tender an exemption, the question is, can the exemption be used to close an account, which is a prepaid account in substance, without first exhausting the liabilities of the straw man, i.e. the mercury thermometer? The liability is temperatures below zero. And in order to get a reading above zero, the mercury must first go in the thermometer from way negative to small negative to zero, and then finally to positive. So on a macro scale, must one literally exhaust the liabilities, i.e. assets, of the straw man before, in the machine world or the matrix or the fiction world, they will allow an asset, i.e. the exemption, to be used to close and settle an account. That's theory number one. And what we've seen happen in a number of cases in which people's straw men actually have income and hold or own assets, we've seen time and time again where the public side attempts to levy or seize or charge on those assets before they merely apply the exemption that the living soul has authorized the public side to apply to settle and close any one transaction. So the question first comes down, must you die totally, or must not you, but your straw man die totally to the world of illusion and fiction, and give up all of its assets, i.e. liabilities there, before the exemption can be applied to any transaction? Or, theory number two, the facts and the accounting are irrelevant and immaterial. The straw man, being on the public side, can have title to him any amount of assets, i.e. liabilities, that he comes across in normal transactions, and that it's irrelevant and immaterial in any one transaction to either prohibit or stand in the way of a settlement and closure of any one transaction that is brought about by the acceptance, return, and authorization of the living man to an appropriate counselor in the machine world. And that the only thing that is relevant here is staying in honor. then the question comes up, why does the attorneys, the bankers, and everybody else in the machine world always tend to gravitate and go after the assets, i.e. liabilities, of the straw man without generally applying the consideration of the exemption as the living soul is authorized in a transaction? Is it because the living soul falls into a level of procedural dishonor in his attempt to get the public officers to do this? And is the repeated attempt by the public officers to gravitate to the asset liability side just to further test the living souls to see if they know who they are and what they're doing? Because we know there's been transactions that have been settled and closed on the public side without exhausting the assets of the straw man and vice versa. And so this guy says to me today, he said, you mean to say maybe not all of those people understand it, maybe they're not getting it, maybe they're not following the law, maybe it's something that they're doing here that what we think should be working isn't working. And I'm going, no, what is it that you did? And when he told me that when they returned the instrument, he accepted that. Then they told me that they notified him of the notice of lien. And he wrote to them and told them that they should cancel that lien because of things that he had given them, showing that he had tendered an instrument for settlement and closure. They immediately came back and said, we'd be happy to cancel that lien upon tender of a certified check or a money order. What did he say he did with respect to that letter? What did he do? When? When did he testify? Well, he said to them, take it away. They wrote back and said, we'd be happy to if you tendered to us a certified bank check or a money order. What did he do when he got that letter? He did nothing for 30 days. Then he came back again and told him once again that they had to cancel it, and again showed the evidence that he had already sent an instrument for settlement and closure. So the first responsive letter that said we'd be happy in a heartbeat if you just send us a certified bank check or a postal money order, he never responded to that. Timely. First dishonor. Okay? Actually, it was the second dishonor because he told them to cancel the lien. Why is he instructing them to cancel the lien? What did he do when he told them to cancel the lien? He said, I'm judging this case and you're wrong. The lien is in their world. Who is the lien against? Straw man. Is he the straw man? No. When he tells them to cancel a lien, isn't he acting in behalf of the straw man?
Yes.
What has he just done? Appeared on the public side of the case by telling them to cancel a lien. He drafted them or charged them to cancel a lien. So he appeared in public, which he can't ever do, go over into their world like that, and he basically judged them saying, look, at the evidence here, I win and you lose. What are you doing? What should he have done? He should have put in a letter rogatory and a request along with a letter or an affidavit of negative averment and the evidence, and asked them to show cause why they shouldn't reach the conclusion in their law form to cancel a lien. Everybody understand the difference here? Say that again. Okay. When he told them to cancel a lien because look at all the evidence I have here, he was acting in the capacity of a judge to matters that appeared in the public. He, as a living man, is in the private. His job isn't to tell the public how to do their job. Not only that, you can't judge the case for his own straw man. He's the one that pays the debts of the straw man. He cannot judge his own straw man as to how much I will or won't pay or whether I don't have to pay. So rather than ordering them to cancel a lien, he should have requested by letter rogatory for them to take a look at what was going on in their law form. And I have attached a negative averment affidavit and other evidence that appears from your law form that I'm asking you to look at your own evidence and make your own decision as to what you need to do. That would be honoring the other party. Let them, that you go low and say, if there's something I'm not understanding here, I humbly ask that you instruct me what it is that I have failed to do and what I need to do. But I'm requesting that you look at the evidence and the negative averments that I send you from your own law form. And I suggest that I ask you to make a determination in terms of what you've already done in order to cancel it. Now, when they came back and said, we'll be happy to do it in a heartbeat if you do this. It's like tit for tat. You want to order us to do something in our public side? We will order you what to do that we can see in our public side. If you want to order us in the public side to cancel it, we want to order you to produce a payment in the public side that we'll acknowledge. Because you're in the public business, so you've got to bring a public tender. Had he acted honorably from the private side and asked them to consider the private tender and discharged the public lien, they'd have probably followed suit. But he both charged them and he got into their business, not once but twice. Now, as soon as he dishonored them twice and appeared on the public side, the IRS sent a notice of levy to one of the people that provided a wage to the straw person. And this entity happened to be an insurance company. And this guy said, you know, it is extremely interesting that there are a number of companies that owe the straw man wages. And there's no doubt about the fact that the IRS as an agency probably knows every one of them. But the IRS chose to go to the company that owes the straw man the least amount of wages as an example for their first levy. Which is like saying that the IRS isn't punishing this guy they're noticing this guy that he's got a problem. Because understand, this guy has done everything right. They're just testing him to see how right he is. And when they tested him a little more than just average, this guy screwed up and came back and subtly appeared on the public side. No, it wasn't Irwin Schiff, was it? I'll put a negative averment on the tape. Now, what is interesting is that the amount of money the IRS is looking at is like a whole mountain. And what's coming out of this one levy is like a super small molehill. Now, the insurance company contacted the living man behind the straw man and noticed the living man that there was a levy. This guy said to me, IRS never noticed me of a levy. I went, why would they have to? Oh, because in their statutes and codes they got to go through all these things and they didn't do that. I said, oh, so now we're back into the world of Wonderland again, and we're going to argue they don't have the right to do that? I said, why? You've been telling me that almost for the last 6 to 8 months the IRS has been kind of like in this lull. What do you think put them in the lull? Wasn't it the honor of what you were doing in your negotiations? And then all of a sudden, in a little example, these people leap on a levy without any paperwork or anything in their law form. You haven't been arguing anything in their law form, so why should they be using any procedure per se in their law form? You've been negotiating in the private, giving them the exemption. Look, either the exemption settles and closes the account or it doesn't. Why do they have to follow statutes if you're living in the private and you want them to mirror the closure in the private? He said, well, why did they go public then? I said, you went public first. You trespassed on them and told them what to do in the public. Instead of honorably and humbly going low and giving them the opportunity to draw their own conclusions and actions in the public. So when you went public, they came back and crucified you just a little bit in the public again. They're going to see where you're going to go and what you're going to do now. You made one mistake and went a little bit public, so they went a little bit public. Now they're going to sit there and see what you do. If you come back and charge them again in the public, I guarantee they're going to come back and levy your straw man some more in the public. If you go back to honor in the private, chances are you may just end up getting your remedy. First of all, you should have responded to their letter back to you and done it to apologize for going back to the public in your draft to them. He said, okay, so what's the remedy? I said, you've got two parties involved. First of all, you happen to have the insurance company as an interpleader involved, and you have the IRS involved. You're in dishonor to the IRS, which meant that the IRS put a levy on a public entity, the insurance company, to give you notice because you didn't take notice directly from the IRS that you had moved public. And so they go, well, let's bring in a third-party witness that you went public here too. We'll bring in the insurance company if you don't believe us. So I said, if I were in your position, I said, I think having found out I made a mistake, I would do separate letter rogatories, one to the IRS to apologize and correct that problem, and then I'd do a letter rogatory to the insurance company to try to respond to the insurance company's notice and draft. And the letter rogatory and accompanying documents that I would send to the IRS, I would copy to the insurance company. And the letter rogatory and the documents I sent to the insurance company, I would copy to the IRS, because we're all in it, but you don't want to make it a three-party affair, because you are the one that has to deal with settling the insurance company issue and settling the IRS issue in behalf of your straw man. He said, well, what would I do? I said, the first thing you're going to have to do in the letter rogatory to the IRS is humbly apologize for trespassing on the public side of the IRS 2, 3, or 4 times here. And then I would tender to them a new payment to discharge all of the public liabilities by way of settlement and closure. And I wouldn't be telling them what they have to do in terms of a judgment on the public side. And I would notice the IRS that with your current new tender, I would give the IRS notice of the notice of levy to the third party, and I would honorably and humbly suggest to the IRS that if the new tender is sufficient for settlement and closure of the account, that if they feel this would settle and close the matter, to notify the insurance company of a cancellation then of the levy. And you're going to ditto all that material to the insurance company to show them that you're settling the claim with the IRS, but you're not telling the insurance company not to carry through the levy. You've told the IRS if they understand and if this settles the account, the IRS should notify the insurance company of the cancellation of the levy. Then when it comes to the insurance company, you're going to send a copy of all that IRS stuff, and you're going to notify by letter rogatory the insurance company, and you're going to accept the notice of levy for value and return it for value. You're going to put in a negative averment, including apology that it was your error with respect to your dealings with the IRS that created the condition of dishonor by which the insurance company got pulled into this third-party transaction, and that had you done your job right, that the insurance company would not be drugged into this interpleader action, and that you're giving the insurance company notice that you of the documentation that has been set forth to the Internal Revenue Company, or to the Internal Revenue, for settlement and closure of the account so that the levy would be unnecessary. Then you could also request of the insurance company and give them assurances that the insurance company, which has a contract to provide the salary or the pay or wages to the straw man, that you, as the party writing them, will underwrite any liability that the insurance company may have to a third party, including the IRS, if the insurance company undertakes any actions with regard to these notices and would incur any liability. You are going to be a surety to make sure that the insurance company will not have any liability or damage for whatever it is the insurance company might acquire, and you could even request that the insurance company, isn't the insurance company kind of populated with lawyers and accountants? Don't lawyers and accountants supposedly understand the concepts of accounting, debt, asset, liability, settlement closure? So if you've sent copies of all of this thing that you've done to the IRS for settlement and closure, and you request that the insurance company review this documentation and inform you if you've made any mistakes as far as paying the original, actually not paying because you can't pay it, but tendering consideration to settle and close the account, and suggest that the insurance company then is on their own with regard to whether, after observing